a wick fill, you know. So now we're going to slowly move into market structure. What is market structure? How do you trade market structure? What's a wick fill? How do you trade a wick fill? These little things which you can kind of like identify to have profitable trades. And this is really, really important. This has been my bread and butter for a very, very long time. So for simplicity's sake, wicks are filled whenever price is in momentum, right? Just from a very, very simplistic standpoint. Wick fills, they start from lower time frame structure, which leads to higher time frame wick fills, which also means is that if you have a daily candle, right? Let's say if you have higher time frame candles here to the left hand side and you have lower time frame to the right hand side. And if you have a daily candle which is closing bearish, now you see the top is a liquidity wick on the bearish candle and the bottom is a range. Now when a daily candle leaves a wick down over here, this means that it has the ability for the next candle to fill this wick. Right? Now it's really easy to look at the higher time frame and say, okay, it's going to fill the wick, but then you have to ask that how? What kind of confirmations can we look at on the smaller time frames to see that, okay, maybe now it's going to fill the wick, right? So let's break this daily candle down into smaller time frames. Now we know there are 6 4-hour candles in one daily candle. So let's say the 4-hour candle started right over here. Right? 4-hour candle was bullish. It went up, which means the daily candle went up to make a liquidity wick. Makes sense? This is going to be, I'm going to go really slow on this and then I'm going to repeat it again. Right? So 4-hour candle first went bullish and then the daily candle went bullish to make a top wick. Right? And then the 4-hour candle went bearish. When the 4-hour candle started going bearish, you had the top wick formed on the daily candle. Right? And then we had candles moving bearish. We had another candle moving bearish, making this low over here on the daily candle. And then we had a candle moving bullish, right? So when you have this candle moving bullish from here, right, it's like it's creating a support, right? It's creating a low right now, which is a low being formed on the daily candle. Make sense? So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is the close of the first daily candle, right? So the daily candle started, we know, daily candle opened right over here, right? Which was the open right over here because the bullish candles start from the bottom. And then daily candle made a high over here, which was the high created right over here. And then we started moving down and we created a low down over here, which was the low formed on the daily candle. And then the daily candle closed at this point, which was the close at this point. Make sense? I hope I've made myself very clear about how the daily candle has formed, and we're going to go over this again too. Now, for the next daily candle to fill the wick, how would the next market structure look like? Or how would you want to execute based on that, right? So most important thing is that the trend was bearish. We waited for a support to be formed, and then we waited for price to pull back. So now a low has been formed, and now price is pulling back. So now what you want to see is you want to see a candle flipping in your direction, which will mean you want candle to going bearish for you to say that, okay, now we can probably target this wick fill. So let's remove these arrows, and we will now see how we can target that wick fill. So wait for the next candles. Now, this is how the next daily candle should look like. The next daily candle should make a top wick, make a high. It should open right over here, continue down, make a low, and then close right over here. And this move down will be our trading move. This is where we need to see that, okay, this is where we want to take profits. So this is the trade we want to take. Now how would we know what would happen on the smaller time frames here, right? So let's take a look here. So the first 4-hour candle forms on the daily. So it makes a wick right over here, right? And then someone asked, does a wick gets filled? We're about to answer that question again. Please don't answer any questions. Leave all your questions till the end. All your questions are going to be answered. Or that's okay. So now the next candle, now it goes bearish. So when a candle goes bearish, right, now you know that the wick is going to get filled. If you don't see a candle going bearish, this means a wick might not get filled. Right, so now when you have a candle going bearish, based on what we've learned, we know that, okay, now since we've formed a resistance, what's the probability for the next candle to go bearish? And someone can say, okay, well, the probability is pretty high, because if on the daily time frame, if we have to fill this wick, then we want the next candle after this to continue going bearish. Something like this. Now the candles are making lower highs and lower lows, and we go to next candle, they keep making lower highs and lower lows, right? So this is where you said, okay, now maybe a wick is getting filled, right? So now since now the candle is going bearish, we know that, okay, now what's going to happen is maybe the daily candle is making a low right over here, which was the low right here on the left hand side, right? But for the daily candle to close where it closed, we need a bullish candle closing right over here, which is going to be like this, right? So a close of the 4-hour at this point is also the close of the daily candle at this point. Does this make sense? Kind of makes sense. But if we were to say that, okay, if the wick would not get filled, then what would happen? If someone can say, okay, what if the wick doesn't get filled, or do the wicks always get filled? The answer is no. And the only way you would know that is if this was a bullish candle. If you had a bullish candle over here, then you would say that, okay, maybe, price is now starting to move up, and maybe this wick will not get filled. Because for you to know if the wick is going to get filled or not, you need to go to the smaller time frames and you look for confirmations. For this wick to get filled, this bearish candle closing was our confirmation. That, okay, now maybe price may start to go up. But if the next candle, let's say if the next candle goes bullish like this and stops you out, then that's just the probability of price not working out. Because when you have a candle closing bearish at a minor resistance, just like we talked about in the previous slides, there's a very high probability that price will continue moving bearish. So awesome. So let's continue on over here. Let's go to the, I think next we